Hey rock stars, Lid Shaw, and I'm here at NAMM 2022 at the Spitfire Audio Booth to talk with Oliver and Dan about how you can use Spitfire to make great records in your home studios. And this came at the request of David Mortara, a fan on our show, so thanks for asking the question, David. Let's jump in. Oliver, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm very good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. And Dan, good to meet you.
Nice to see you.
So now both of you are composers, or how do you use your studios and how do you use Spitfire?
So we're both composers for Spitfire Audio, so we write demos with new products, we test new products, and we make videos online to destruct our tracks or walk through the libraries.
Right on. Very cool. And how about you, Dan? Same thing?
Same thing, but yeah, I think for a lot of us, because we're working on other projects outside of Spitfire as well, we get to use these new toys and play with them, and a big part of this is beta testing libraries as well, and seeing how a composer might do something to be a little bit more musical or make something a little bit more playable. So a lot of our libraries have been designed by composers for composers, and we find them to work really, really well. I mean, sometimes libraries are those more traditional sort of orchestral sounds and pianos and things, which are great mock-up tools. And then other times we get a bit more experimental, and you'll hear some of the articulations in this library that are maybe something that you wouldn't be able to do unless you did it in a sampling approach, where you take each note one at a time and use it to create interesting textures.
All right, very cool. So think about it like this. For somebody like me, I come up from rock and roll band background and the studio, and I love the sound of the stuff I hear, but I always feel a little bit new to it, so I'm easily fascinated by these beautiful sounds that you guys create. So maybe give it as a presentation to us, so that those of us who are sort of brand new to this idea, and how do you use Spitfire to create in your studio, if you're not yet creating for film or something like that, and give us an intro to what you guys got here. So
Sure.
what would you like to show off?
We're going to show today a library that's called Heirloom, and it's actually a library that's curated by a producer and songwriter himself. Called Keaton Henson. Yeah.
Right on, right on. All right, cool. So maybe we'll just get in close here and go ahead and tell us what you're doing, and point at the screen, show it off, and we'll see what we got.
So I guess taking you from the very beginning, we have a plugin that we make ourselves, Spitfire Audio plugins, and you just load an instrument or a MIDI track, and it would show up here, Spitfire Audio, Heirloom. And it's a similar process in all the DAWs, whatever DAW you're working in. And then you load your specific instrument or section that you want to play here in our interface. I'm going to just take you through a few sounds. For example, here we've loaded a tubax, and then you have all sorts of controls here depending on the library. On this one we have reverb, release, tightness, or down here we have different articulations, so you have longs, stabs, air. For example, here in orchestral ones you have tremolo or pizzicato or all the other kind of articulations. We usually have different mic signals as well, so for those of you who like to go into detail and mix the stuff, it's really...
That's pretty much us, because we're all studio guys, so we love playing with mics.
Yeah, exactly. So we usually have a ton of mics set up for whatever we're recording. And here we have a mix, usually made by some in-house engineers or by more famous mix engineers, and that's called a Mix 1. You can fade up your tape signal here, your close signal, mid signal, etc., room signal. In this one we have a specific one that's called listening. So this is as if you would be listening from a different room, so we kind of get experimental as well here and there.
Let me ask you a quick question. So when you were showing the first thing, you showed articulations, and I understand what that is, but I think for some of us who aren't composing with MIDI, and we don't do this every day, how should we think about using things like that? Are there quick and easy ways? If we're just used to playing an instrument like playing a guitar, how do we play this to make it feel simple and playable?
So you would load an articulation per track here. So you have longs here. So in this case, it's you would kind of play on the keyboard. Then you would play a longs line, or if you then want a short note, you can either. There's two ways. You have key switches. So you play on your MIDI keyboard. If you want to do it more playable, you assign like an articulation to a key, and you switch while you play. So like long notes and then over to the short note by switching it. I personally like to write to have each articulation on a different track. so I can mix it easier or address it easier if you want to change the velocity or something like that. And also when you share a session with someone else that might not have set up key switches, it doesn't get all messy, which MIDI sometimes does.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, if we're just in the beginning and we're like trying to explore this stuff and we just want to be able to come up with ideas, our left hand could be doing this down here, and when you press a different key, it changes the articulation there, and our right hand can play the chords, so we can kind of come up with ideas right there on the spot?
Yes, absolutely, yeah, that's how it works. I would say that's probably more, if you want to do it in real time, maybe you need some sort of keyboard skills, some basic ones. So I actually recommend just to load up one articulations per track and kind of focus on that one and get your hands on it and play it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, articulations, like we're doing a long string part, or we're just doing pizzicato, or we're just doing short notes. Right, that makes sense. You don't really have to jump all over the place. Probably sound kind of chaotic. So what should we look at next?
I think we're just going to play you something,
Okay,
if that's all right. I've loaded a bunch of sounds here, and just to give you an idea how it works. We're going to start with a tubax, which is a bass saxophone, is that, or a contrabass? It's a bass saxophone, I think. Yeah, tubax. Dan, do you wanna give it a go?
You start, and I'll do it next. Yeah.
I'll give you a go with the tubax. Usually on my left hand, what I'm doing is I'm using these controllers called MIDI CC. So by moving this controller here, you see this slider moving, and these are the different dynamics. So when a player records, he or she will typically record piano, pianissimo, mezzo forte, forte, so from very quiet to very loud, the whole range. And by moving this, you can tell the plugin which sample to reproduce, to play. So if it's all the way down, you play piano. If it's all the way up, you play forte. So you get quite a natural way of playing.
And that's just by moving the modulation wheel down below there with your left hand.
Yes, exactly. And in case you were wondering, this one is expression, but what that is basically just the volume, the overall volume of the instrument. If you have like a MIDI fader, you can move both of them, so you get even more kind of expressiveness into the performance.
That's some pretty cool sounds, man. It really sounds like it's changing the tone the way somebody playing it would be. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So if you listen closely, so all the way down, it's actually quite airy, the sound. So you can play several notes at the same time, even though it's a solo instrument. But then obviously all the way up, it gets really raspy, as we just heard. Sorry about
Rock and roll, man, rock and roll.
You're a rock podcast now. So.
Yes, indeed. Okay, cool. Do you want to show off some strings or anything like that?
So I've just loaded an articulation that's called flautando, which is when the player plays really lightly with the bow and slightly over the bridge. It's one of my favorites. And so here you also use the mod wheel here to get the same expressiveness. I like to increase the reverb a little bit and the release, so we have a bit of a softer sound in the transition when I change the chords.
That's gorgeous sounding. That is really nice. I'm ready to make a rock record that's just strings doing that.
Yeah, I hope you will. It sounds, yeah, I'm a big fan of this library. It sounds really beautiful. And I just want to show you, I guess, the contra bass clarinet, which is equally as gorgeous. So you get this let's play this like short air sounds here.
I love the sound of that reverb too. Now, is that actually the actual reverb tail of those samples, or is it sort of blended together with some reverb added to it as well?
Sometimes it's a bit of a mixture. I mean, this was recorded in Church Studios. It's a fairly small studio, so compared to other things we record at Air or Abbey Road. But yeah, there's always a little bit of extra reverb that we kind of choose and put with the...
Nice. Well, one of the things is I have messed around with the Bernard Herrmann strings that you guys made, which are just incredible sounding. And in that case, I loaded them into Contact Player as a contact instrument. But is this new that it can be loaded as its own plugin now, or is that a new thing for you guys?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's around 2 years old, 3 years maybe, something like that. I would say. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about some of your philosophy on using this in the studio, just composing. Let's say you were going to give me or David, who just asked the question for us to come over here, instructions on like how do you put together a simple string section for a recording using these tools?
Right. Well, quite often we have libraries that have individual instruments, so there'll be violin 1, violin 2, violas, cello, basses, and then we also have our ensemble patches, which are the best way to get started with two hands. And if you're used to writing on a guitar, you probably have particular inversions that you might like to write in, but as a keyboard player for myself, sometimes just taking that piano part and just moving it down to a string patch just to get an idea, just a sketch to begin with, is a good way to lay down an initial foundation. And then we might go in and get those individual instruments, because one of the things that's great about ensembles is it's very fast to put down. It's they're just long patches, but there's no real thought about voice leading, making something that sounds really realistic. It might go from an 8-note chord down to a 3-note chord, and how would an ensemble actually play that? Whereas when you think about using individual instruments with legato patches where they've not only recorded the long notes, but then the transition from every note to every note above and every note below it, so it sounds a lot more realistic. And so there's definitely like a two-step process in creating strings like that. But I think like any instrument or like synthesizers, it doesn't have to be a scary thing. It can just be something that it's just a set of tools to make interesting sounds. And
well, very cool. Yes, I've watched a little bit of YouTube videos on trying to build a string section, and that was one of the things that really struck me was simplifying it. It's like, come up with a voicing, just play the chord changes first, and then put that onto one track, and then you can just go grab the low line, put it down to the basses, go grab the middle line, put it down to the violas, the high line, move it to the violins, and all of a sudden it starts to sound pretty real. And then I guess after that, you can then back up and you can write in some of your expression moves and things that you were showing us as well, right?
That's right, yeah. I mean, all of this stuff is very easy to pencil in, so you can automate the mod wheel to come up, as Oliver showed you, but also you don't have to involve every instrument at every point, and that's what we like about composer toolkits like this. It's got a piano, it's got guitars and strings and all of that stuff, so what started out as a whole string sketch, you might think, actually I don't want to add the strings until the final chorus now, because I can add my little guitar shimmers, or I can add other little textural layers and things like that. So yeah, it's just nice to have options, I guess, and that's what sampling enables us to do. It makes it more accessible, because now for someone who's never written for strings before, they can mock this up on their computer and then actually take it to a session, and they know that it's going to sound good. So yeah, it's really exciting.
So right on, and just to bring it back to the rock and roll for a second, one of the things I really appreciated about this was at the beginning of you explaining how to do it, you mentioned you said you've got two ands, and that of course brings me back to Spinal Tap when Viv Savage is asked if he can cover the bass part in Big Bottom, and he says, oh, yeah, I got two ands, so well done, man. Yeah. So thanks very much for giving us that, thanks. Dan.
Beautiful.
And thanks, Oliver, yeah. So let the rock stars know, where should they go if they want to find out more about this? What if they're ready to just go ahead and check out Heirloom and get it installed in their studios?
SpitfireAudio.com and at Spitfire Audio on all social platforms.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much, Rockstars. Thanks for watching the video. Hit the like button. Hit it twice, actually. No, don't do that because then it'll turn off the like.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, sorry about that. And then subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get more of these videos. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss any from us here at NAMM 2022. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.